There are 78 classified gravity levels in the known universe that will, without question, turn your skeleton into a fine powder. The Interstellar Safety Commission spent 9,000 years and the GDP of 16 star systems figuring this out, mostly through trial and error, lots of error, fatal error actually. Humanity was using them as gymnasiums, not metaphorically, not as some poetic expression of their resilience. Actual gymnasiums, complete with monthly membership fees, protein shake bars, and motivational posters featuring improbable abdominal muscles. Blorthax, Quendril the unnecessarily thorough, hadn't slept in what his species considered 3 days, which was approximately 6 hours in human time, because human time made no sense, and neither did anything else about these creatures. He stared at his datapad with all 4 of his eye stalks, hoping that perhaps one of them was malfunctioning and showing him incorrect information. They were not. The information was horrifyingly accurate. The datapad displayed a document that would, in approximately 16 hours, require his signature and therefore his complicity in acknowledging that the most dangerous gravitational fields in known space had been transformed into what humans called CrossFit locations. Lul. Blorthax worked for the Department of Habitable Zone Compliance, subsection Gravitational Safety, paragraph 92, addendum theta, which was exactly as boring as it sounded until 3 weeks ago, when someone noticed that humans had submitted rental applications for every single classified Deathworld in the Kepler sector. Not mining operations, not research facilities, not even prisons, which would have at least made a kind of demented sense. Gyms, 53 of them, with waiting lists. This cannot be correct, Blorthax said to his assistant Vrelnak, who had the unfortunate quality of always being correct about everything, which made him deeply unpleasant at parties. The data has been verified 8 times. Vrelnak replied, his gill slits fluttering with what might have been amusement or respiratory distress. With Vrelnak, it was often difficult to tell. Humans have been operating these facilities for approximately 19 months. They charge other humans money to attend. They charge them, quite substantial amounts actually. The waiting list for Kepler 442b is currently at 18,000 individuals. Kepler 442b was classified as gravitational hazard level 73. The last scientific expedition to its surface had resulted in 3 deaths, 14 permanent disabilities, and 1 researcher who simply refused to discuss what had happened to his pelvis. Blorthax pulled up the casualty report from that expedition, which he had written personally 6 years ago. He had used words like catastrophic structural failure and unsurvivable compression events, and please, for the love of all that persists beyond death, never send anyone here again. There was a video attachment on the human rental application. Against his better judgment, which was considerable, Blorthax opened it. A human female with improbably yellow hair was smiling at the camera with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for religious experiences or significant narcotics. Behind her, other humans were lifting objects that Blorthax recognized as compressed iron weights, in 73 times normal gravity. "Hi there," the human said with terrifying cheerfulness. "I'm Candace with a K, and welcome to Kepler Crush Zone, where we help you crush your fitness goals and your vertebrae." Just kidding about that second part. Mostly. She wasn't kidding. Blorthax could see a medical station in the background with what appeared to be a very busy staff. "Here at Kepler Crush, we believe that pain is just weakness leaving your body, along with occasionally some other fluids. But that's what the waiver forms are for." Candace with a K was now walking across the facility, which appeared to be a converted cargo hangar. "Our certified trainers will help you achieve results that are literally impossible on Earth, which has basically baby gravity." "Can you even call that gravity? We can't." A human male entered the frame, carrying what Blorthax's datapad identified as approximately 200 kilograms. In Earth gravity, this would have been impressive. In Kepler 442b gravity, this meant the human was casually lifting over 14,000 kilograms. "That's Derek," Candace said. "He's been with us for 3 months and has already gained 18 pounds of muscle mass. Tell them how you feel, Derek." Derek, who should by all known biological models have been liquefied, grinned widely and said, "I've never felt better. Sure, I threw up blood for the first 2 weeks, but that's just part of the process." The video ended. Blorthax sat in silence for a period of time that his people called a contemplative horror interval. "I need to go there," he finally said. "Sir, I need to see this personally. If I submit this report without verification, the regulatory committee will think I've developed a neurological condition, which I might have, because this makes no sense." Vrelnak's gill slits did their ambiguous flutter thing again. "Shall I arrange transport?" "Yes. Book passage to Kepler 442b. And Vrelnak?" "Sir." "Find out if our species has ever successfully survived gravitational hazard level 73. "I already checked, sir. We have not. The recommended maximum for our species is level 9. "Of course it is," Blorthax said, reaching into his desk drawer for the emergency anxiety medication he had been prescribed after the Kepler 442b expedition incident. "Of course it is. The journey to Kepler 442b took 6 days, which Blorthax spent reading every available piece of information about human physiology, becoming progressively more disturbed with each document. Humans had evolved on what they called a Deathworld, which apparently meant a planet that was actively trying to kill its inhabitants through weather, geology, biology, and occasionally other humans. Their planet rotated at a speed that would cause most species severe nausea. Their sun bombarded them with radiation that would sterilize agrentics in minutes. Their oceans were filled with creatures that existed solely to inject poison into whatever they encountered. Their land was filled with creatures that existed solely to inject poison into whatever they encountered. Even their plants occasionally injected poison into whatever they encountered. And yet humans had looked at all of this and decided that what they really needed was more challenge. The transport ship's captain, a Whelan named Tresnik, who had the deeply unsettling habit of clicking his mandibles when nervous, had been making that clicking sound for the past 4 days. "You're sure you want to go down there?" Tresnik asked for the 93rd time. "I'm not sure of anything anymore," Blorthax replied, checking his environmental suit for the 94th time. It was rated for gravitational hazard level 12. He was about to experience level 73. The suit would provide approximately no protection whatsoever, but regulations required him to wear it anyway, which seemed to perfectly summarize the absurdity of bureaucracy. The descent pod shook violently as it entered Kepler 442b's atmosphere. Blorthax felt his internal organs attempting to relocate to positions they had never occupied before. The gravity was already noticeable, and they were still 8 kilometers up. "You know," came a human voice through the pod's communication system, "most species send down robots for initial assessment. You folks are really committed to that hands-on approach." The voice belonged to someone named Ratch, who was apparently Kepler Crush Zone's atmospheric entry coordinator, which seemed like an unnecessarily fancy title for someone who told you where to land. "I require direct observation," Blorthax managed to say, through what felt like 4 simultaneous strokes. "Respect," Ratch said. "Fair warning, though. We've had exactly 3 non-human visitors before you, and all 3 of them lasted about 40 seconds before requesting immediate evacuation. One of them was crying, really crying, like the full body shaking kind. We felt pretty bad about that." "How reassuring!" The pod landed with a thud that Blorthax felt in organs he hadn't previously known existed. The hatch opened, and gravity hit him like a tactical weapon. He had experienced level 9 gravity during training. It had been unpleasant, like wearing a suit made of regret and poor life choices. This was something else entirely. This was like being hugged by a collapsing star that also hated you personally. Blorthax managed to stand, which took approximately all of his effort and willpower. Through his helmet's display, he could see the facility entrance, which was roughly 20 meters away. 20 meters that might as well have been 20 light years. A human was jogging toward him. Jogging! Moving at what appeared to be recreational speed through gravity that should have been compressing their bones into something resembling a meat crayon. "Hey there!" the human said, and Blorthax realized it was Candace with a K from the video. She was somehow even more cheerful in person. "Welcome to Kepler Crush. I'm guessing this is your first time in real gravity." "Real gravity," Blorthax repeated, his words coming out like he was gargling gravel. "Your species classifies this as real?" "Well, yeah, Earth is basically a pillow planet. 0.8 standard G, that's barely enough to keep your breakfast down." She extended a hand, which Blorthax stared at with the kind of existential dread usually reserved for cosmic voids. "Need help getting to the facility? No judgment. Everyone starts somewhere." The indignity of requiring assistance to walk 20 meters was substantially outweighed by the certainty that he would die if he attempted it alone. Blorthax accepted the human's hand. She lifted him, not dragged, not supported, lifted, like he was a small bag of lightweight items. "There we go," Candace said, carrying him with one arm while using her other hand to wave at someone in the distance. "Derek, got another observer." Derek, who Blorthax recognized from the video as the man who had been casually lifting 14,000 kilograms, waved back enthusiastically. They reached the facility entrance, and Candace set Blorthax down, with the kind of care one might use when placing a delicate antique on a shelf. "Okay, so here's the deal. We've got a low-gravity zone inside. Well, low for here, anyway. It's only about 39 times standard, so you should be able to move around a bit. We installed it after those other visitors had their incidents." 39 times standard," Blorthax said slowly, "is your low-gravity zone?" "For this facility, yeah. Some of our other locations go way higher. There's one on Proxima Extreme that hits level 96, but that's really for the serious enthusiasts. We actually had to add extra medical staff there." The doors opened, and Blorthax entered what humans apparently considered a comfortable environment. The lobby looked like any standard fitness facility, if fitness facilities were located inside active volcanoes. There were motivational posters on the walls featuring humans in various poses of exertion. One poster said, "Embrace the pain," over an image of someone who appeared to be actively questioning their life choices. Another said, "Gravity is just a suggestion," next to what appeared to be a medical disclaimer in very small print. Through a transparent wall, Blorthax could see the main gymnasium floor. Dozens of humans were engaged in activities that violated several laws of physics and possibly some laws of basic decency. One was running on a treadmill in 73 times gravity. Another was jumping, voluntarily leaving the ground when the ground was the only thing preventing them from being compressed into neutron-dense material. "First time seeing humans exercise?" Candace asked, noticing his expression, which his helmet's emotion sensors would have classified as pre-trauma. "I have seen many species engage in physical fitness activities," Blorthax replied carefully, "none of them in conditions that should be causing immediate death." "Right, yeah, we get that a lot." "Want the tour? Fair warning, it might challenge some of your assumptions about biological limits." "My assumptions about biological limits have already been cremated and scattered to solar winds. I suppose further damage is unlikely." Candace grinned, which humans did when they were happy or about to do something inadvisable, or sometimes both. "Love the attitude." "Okay, so Kepler Crush has been operational for about 22 months now. We started with just basic equipment, but demand was so crazy that we expanded 3 times. We're currently servicing about 800 regular members, with another 5,000 on the waiting list." 5,000 people are waiting for the privilege of experiencing this? "Well, yeah, Do you have any idea how hard it is to build muscle on Earth anymore? Standard gravity is basically a spa day for your skeletal system. People were getting desperate, doing insane stuff like wearing weighted vests everywhere or moving to Mars, which has even worse gravity somehow. Then someone figured out that these classified death worlds were just sitting here empty and, well, she gestured broadly at the facility. Capitalism found a way. They walked along the observation corridor, and Blorthax watched humans performing feats that should have been physically impossible. A woman was doing pull-ups while wearing what appeared to be additional weights in 73 times gravity. She was somehow not being compressed into a singularity. "That's Yolanda," Candace said. "She's training for the Kepler Ultra Marathon next month. 50 kilometers in level 73 gravity. People run marathons here. Oh yeah, it's becoming a whole thing. Last year's winner finished in just under 19 hours. She vomited blood 32 times, but kept going. That's dedication." Blorthax felt his anxiety medication beginning to wear off. "Is there somewhere I can sit down?" "Sure, we've got a meditation area just past the medical wing. Speaking of which, want to see our medical facilities? We're really proud of them. I'm not sure my psychological state can withstand. Too late, we're here." Candace had already opened a door marked Medical Bay, crushing your fitness goals since 2347. The medical wing was larger than Blorthax had expected, which made sense given that every single activity in this facility appeared to be a continuous medical emergency. There were approximately 20 beds, half of which were occupied by humans in various states of recovery. One was reading a book. Another was exercising while recovering from exercising. A human male in medical attire approached them, his name tag reading Dr. Fenwick Sharp, Chief Medical Officer and Orthopedic Surgeon. "Another observer?" Dr. Sharp asked, looking at Blorthax with the kind of professional assessment that medical personnel develop after seeing too much. "You holding up okay? Your species usually can't handle more than 15 minutes in 39G. I am experiencing what I believe humans call an existential crisis," Blorthax replied. "Yeah, that's pretty standard. We see it a lot." Dr. Sharp gestured to the occupied beds. "These folks are all on recovery protocols. Torn muscles, stress fractures, the occasional complete skeletal reorganization. Nothing we can't handle." "Complete skeletal reorganization," Blorthax repeated slowly. "You say this as if it is routine. Well, when you're subjecting the human body to forces, it didn't exactly evolve for adaptations happen. The human skeleton is remarkably plastic, actually. Put enough stress on it consistently, and it basically says, 'Fine, I guess we're doing this now,' and rebuilds itself accordingly." Candace nodded enthusiastically. "It's true! My bone density is up 38% since I started working here. My doctor on Earth couldn't believe it. She kept asking if I was taking illegal supplements, and I was like, no, I just moved to a planet that's trying to kill me. Your doctor thought bone density increases of that magnitude were from drugs." "To be fair," Dr. Sharp said, "in normal circumstances they would be. But these aren't normal circumstances. These are circumstances that the rest of the galaxy seems to have classified as absolutely not under any circumstances ever." Blorthax pulled out his datapad with trembling appendages and began taking notes. "Walk me through the medical protocols. How many casualties have you had?" "Define casualties," Dr. Sharp said, which was not the reassuring opening Blorthax had hoped for. "Deaths! How many deaths?" "Oh, none. 0 deaths. We're very proud of that." Blorthax stared at him. 0 deaths. In a gravitational hazard level 73 environment, in 22 months of operation. "They're correct. The last scientific expedition here resulted in 3 deaths in 6 hours. Dr. Sharp nodded sagely. "Yeah, we studied those reports extensively. Fascinating reading. The main issue seemed to be that they weren't properly conditioned for high-gravity environments. They just showed up and started doing science. Terrible idea." Proper conditioning, Blorthax said, his voice taking on a slightly manic quality. Please explain proper conditioning for an environment that pulverizes bones. Well, you don't just show up and start lifting heavy things, obviously. That would be insane. Dr. Sharp pulled up a chart on his datapad. New members start with a 6-month conditioning program in progressively higher gravity environments. We've got partnerships with facilities at level 20, level 35, level 51, and so on. By the time someone gets here, their body has already adapted significantly. There are multiple facilities. Candace laughed. Oh yeah, there's a whole industry now. Kepler Crush is actually mid-tier. The really intense people go to the level 80+ facilities. We had one member graduate to Proxima Extreme last month. She cried when she left. Happy tears, but also possibly tears from her skull being compressed. Hard to tell sometimes. Blorthax was frantically taking notes now, his appendages moving faster than they had in years. How is this economically viable? The insurance costs alone must be... Actually, insurance is pretty reasonable, Candace interrupted. Turns out humans are way less likely to get injured doing this than doing normal Earth stuff. No car accidents, no slip and fall incidents at the grocery store, no sports injuries from recreational basketball. Just good old-fashioned gravitational crushing. Insurance companies love the predictability, but the injuries are all anticipated and planned for, Dr. Sharp said. Look, on Earth, someone might tear their ACL playing soccer and be completely surprised by it. Here, everyone knows they're going to tear something eventually. We've got protocols, treatment plans, recovery schedules. It's actually very organized suffering. A loud alarm suddenly echoed through the medical bay, and Blorthax experienced what he would later describe as the moment my soul attempted to file for separation from my body. Oh, that's just the compression warning, Candace said casually. Someone's moving into the level 80 zone. Want to see? There's a level 80 zone? Well, yeah. Some people need variety in their workouts. Come on, the observation deck is this way. Before Blorthax could formulate a coherent objection, Candace had grabbed his arm again and was half carrying, half dragging him toward another corridor. They emerged onto an observation deck overlooking what could only be described as the physical manifestation of a very angry god's judgment. The level 80 zone was smaller than the main gymnasium, which made sense because apparently only the truly unhinged humans attempted to exercise there. Through the reinforced transparent wall, Blorthax could see 3 humans engaged in activities that seemed to violate not just physics, but also common decency and possibly several interstellar treaties. One human was simply standing there, which in level 80 gravity was apparently considered a challenging workout. Another was performing what Blorthax recognized as squats, though calling them squats seemed insufficient. These were more like controlled vertical compressions punctuated by defiant resurrections. The third human was doing something that Blorthax had no frame of reference for. She appeared to be lying on her back, pushing a weighted bar upward in 80 times standard gravity. The weight itself, according to the display panel, was 50 kilograms, which meant she was pressing 4,000 kilograms. That's Nalani, Candace said with obvious pride. She holds the facility record for bench press in level 80. Absolute legend. She's been training here for 8 months. 8 months, Blorthax whispered. 8 months ago, she was presumably a normal human on a normal planet living a normal life. Oh no, Nalani's never been normal. She was a competitive powerlifter on Earth, got bored because she was too strong for Earth gravity, said it felt like lifting grocery bags. So she came here. She was too strong for Earth. It happens more than you'd think. Turns out when you're at the peak of human physical performance, normal gravity starts feeling kind of insulting. These facilities give people like Nalani a reason to wake up in the morning. Well, that and the constant screaming pain, but that's part of the appeal. Blorthax watched Nalani complete her set, rack the weight, and then stand up in level 80 gravity as if it were mildly inconvenient rather than absolutely impossible. She waved at the observation deck, saw Blothax, and gave him a thumbs-up gesture that humans used to indicate approval or possibly to taunt officials from low-gravity species. "She seems nice," Blothax said weakly. "Oh, Nalani's the best. Super friendly, always willing to spot for people, gives great advice on managing compression injuries. One time she carried 6 people out of the level 73 zone when the gravity stabilizer hiccuped and jumped to level 81 for about 20 seconds. The gravity stabilizer can malfunction. Well, yeah, it's technology. Technology malfunctions sometimes. But we've got redundant systems, emergency protocols, and Dr. Sharp on speed dial. Plus, honestly, most of our members thought the malfunction was kind of exciting, added some unpredictability to their workout." Blothax was now taking notes so frantically that his datapad was beginning to overheat. "I need statistics. Injury rates, severity classifications, long-term health outcomes, economic impact assessments." "Got all that." Candace pulled out her own datapad, which was covered in stickers that said things like, "Pain is temporary, glory is forever," and "Eat, sleep, crush, repeat." She transferred a massive data file to Blothax's device. "This is everything we've collected since opening. Injury reports, medical outcomes, customer satisfaction surveys, financial records, the works." Blothax opened the file and began reading. The injury rate was, paradoxically, lower than comparable fitness facilities in normal gravity. Customer satisfaction was at 93%. The most common complaint was waiting list too long. The financial records showed the facility operating at a significant profit, with expansion plans already underway. There was a customer testimonial section. Blothax, against his better judgment, began reading. "Kepler Crush changed my life. I lost 60 pounds, gained muscle I didn't know existed, and only broke 4 bones, 5 stars. Gregory P. Best investment I ever made. Sure, I vomit regularly, and my insurance company thinks I'm insane, but I can now lift a small car on Earth gravity." Simone L. "I came here broken and depressed. I left here broken and happy. Would recommend." Rashid K. The testimonials continued for pages. Hundreds of them, all positive, all deeply disturbing. "I need to sit down," Blothax said, which was becoming his most common phrase. "Meditation areas just through here." Candace led him to a quieter section of the facility, which was decorated in what humans apparently considered a calming aesthetic. There were plants that were somehow surviving in 73 times standard gravity, soft lighting and gentle music that sounded like wind chimes being played during an earthquake. Blothax collapsed onto what humans called a beanbag chair, which immediately tried to consume him due to the extreme gravity. He managed to achieve something resembling a seated position and stared at the ceiling, contemplating the cosmic joke that was human existence. "So," Candace said, settling onto her own beanbag chair with disturbing grace, "what do you think so far?" "I think," Blothax said slowly, "that I'm going to have to completely rewrite the Interstellar Safety Commission's guidelines on gravitational hazards." "Yeah, you're probably not the first inspector to realize that. There have been other inspectors?" "Oh, sure. You're number 8, actually. The others all had similar reactions. Lots of note-taking, some crying. One of them just kept repeating, 'But why?' for 20 minutes straight. That was Inspector Thendril from the Cassiopeia sector. Nice guy. Very confused." "What happened to their reports?" "No idea. Never heard anything back. I assume they filed them and then the bureaucracy did its thing. You know how it is. Reports get submitted, committees form, subcommittees form, someone suggests forming a task force, and by the time anyone makes a decision, the heat death of the universe is looking pretty likely." Blothax knew exactly how it was. He had spent his entire career navigating bureaucratic systems designed by people who viewed efficiency as a form of moral weakness. The idea that 7 other inspectors had already filed reports about this situation and nothing had changed was simultaneously unsurprising and deeply depressing. "Can I ask you something?" Blorthax said, looking at Candace with what he hoped was an expression of genuine curiosity rather than barely contained panic. "Sure. Why do humans do this? Not just the physical training, but this, seeking out the most dangerous environments in the galaxy for recreational purposes. Your species has achieved interstellar travel, advanced medicine, apparently very good insurance systems. You could live comfortably on peaceful, safe worlds with reasonable gravity. Why this?" Candace was quiet for a moment, which was unusual for her. When she spoke, her voice had lost some of its cheerful edge. "You know what Earth is like? Really like? I have read the classification documents. Deathworld Category 4. Right. Category 4, which means there are 3 categories of planets that are worse. Do you know what kind of insane luck that is? We evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill us in creative ways. Predators, diseases, weather, geology, other humans. Our entire evolutionary history is just one long story of barely surviving impossible odds." She gestured around at the facility. "And then we figured out space travel and went to other planets, and you know what we found? Easy mode. Planets with gentle weather, reasonable ecosystems, gravity that doesn't constantly remind you of your own mortality. And for a while, that was great. Really great. No more worrying about hurricanes or earthquakes or brain-eating amoebas in the water supply." "That sounds pleasant?" "It should be pleasant. But here's the thing about humans. We're not built for pleasant. We're built for survival. Our bodies, our minds, our entire psychology is designed for struggle. Take away the struggle, and we start creating artificial ones. Extreme sports, competitive eating, social media arguments, reality television. We need challenge, even when challenge makes no logical sense." Candace leaned back in her beanbag chair, staring at the ceiling. "These facilities, they're not really about fitness. I mean, they are, but that's not the point. The point is that they give us back something we lost when we left Earth, that feeling of facing something genuinely difficult and surviving it, of pushing against real limits, not artificial ones. So this is nostalgia for your death world, maybe, or maybe it's just who we are. My great-great-grandmother lived through the Pacific War on Earth, survived things that would give you nightmares for years. And you know what she said when people asked her about it? She said those were the most alive she ever felt. Not happy, not comfortable, but alive. She lived another 60 years after the war, comfortable and safe, and she was grateful for that. But she never felt that same intensity again. Blorthax processed this information, which was somehow more disturbing than watching humans lift impossible weights. Your species is driven by ancestral trauma to recreate dangerous situations. When you put it like that, it sounds bad. "It does sound bad," Candace laughed. "Fair point. Look, I don't speak for all humans. Some people are perfectly happy on comfortable planets, living comfortable lives. But enough of us need this." She gestured at the facility again, "that it's become a whole industry. And honestly, the physical and mental health outcomes are really good. Depression rates among our members are basically 0. Anxiety disorders, gone. Turns out, when you're bench pressing 4,000 kilograms, you don't have much energy left for worrying about whether you sent the right emoji in a text message." A chime sounded, and Candace checked her datapad. "Oh, it's almost time for the afternoon orientation session. We've got 3 new members starting today. Want to watch?" "New members," Blorthax said. "People who are voluntarily beginning their journey into this madness." "That's the spirit! Come on, this is actually the best part. Watching people discover what they're capable of is genuinely inspiring. Or horrifying, sometimes both." They returned to the observation deck, which now overlooked the main gymnasium floor. 3 humans in bright orange jumpsuits were being led by an instructor, a human male whose name tag read, Instructor Vex. Instructor Vex had the physique of someone who had personally fought gravity and won. His muscles had muscles. His posture suggested that he considered level 73 gravity to be a mild suggestion rather than an absolute physical law. "All right, people," Vex announced to the 3 new members. "Welcome to day 1 of the rest of your significantly more painful lives. I'm Vex. I'll be your primary instructor for the next 6 weeks. You're currently in the low gravity zone at 39 times standard. How's everyone feeling?" One of the new members, a woman who looked to be in her mid-30s, raised her hand. "Like I'm wearing a suit made of concrete." "That's normal. That's good, actually. Your body is currently experiencing what we call gravity shock. Your bones are screaming, your muscles are confused, and your cardiovascular system is filing a formal complaint. This is all part of the process." Another new member, a younger male, spoke up. "When does it get easier?" "It doesn't," Vex said cheerfully. "It gets different. Your body will adapt, your strength will increase, your bone density will improve, but it never gets easy. Easy is for Earth. This is Kepler 442b, where we do things the hard way, because the hard way is the only way that matters." The third new member, an older gentleman who looked like he was already regretting every decision that had led him to this moment, asked, "Are we going to die?" "Excellent question. No, you're not going to die. Statistically speaking, you're safer here than you would be driving a car on Earth. You are going to experience pain previously unknown to human existence, but in a controlled, medically supervised, technically legal way." Blorthax watched as Vex led the new members through basic movements. Walking, standing, sitting down and standing back up, which in 39 times gravity was apparently equivalent to an advanced workout. All 3 new members were struggling, shaking, sweating profusely. And all 3 were smiling. Not comfortable smiles, not happy smiles. These were the smiles of people confronting something genuinely difficult and choosing to continue anyway. The smiles of people who had looked at the comfortable, reasonable options available to them and said, "No, thank you, I would prefer to suffer in interesting ways." "This is insane," Blorthax whispered. "Yeah," Candace agreed. "Isn't it great?" Blorthax spent another 3 hours at the facility, conducting interviews, reviewing documentation, observing various activities that all seemed designed to answer the question, what if we did the most inadvisable thing possible? By the end of his visit, his datapad was full of information that would require months to properly process and analyze. He was preparing to leave when Dr. Sharp approached him with a peculiar expression. "Before you go," the doctor said, "I want to show you something. Follow me." They walked to a quieter section of the medical wing, where Dr. Sharp pulled up a series of holographic displays showing detailed medical scans. "These are comparative skeletal scans," Dr. Sharp explained. "This first one is Nalani from 8 months ago, before she started training here. The skeleton looked normal by human standards, which meant it looked absolutely insane by rational biological standards. And this," Dr. Sharp continued, pulling up another scan, "is Nalani now." The difference was remarkable. The bone density had increased dramatically. The skeletal structure had literally reorganized itself, reinforcing stress points, thickening load-bearing bones, creating new structural supports that hadn't existed before. "Her skeleton rebuilt itself," Blorthax said slowly. "Not just hers. Every long-term member shows similar adaptations. The human body is remarkably plastic when consistently stressed. It doesn't just endure, it evolves. On a micro-evolutionary scale, we're watching humans adapt to extreme environments in real time. But this level of adaptation should take generations. In most species, yes. But humans have something called phenotypic plasticity that's off the charts compared to other species. We can adapt to extreme conditions within a single lifetime. It's part of why we survived on Earth despite Earth being, Earth." Dr. Sharp pulled up more scans. "This is Derek, 3 months of training. This is Yolanda, 18 months. This is instructor Vex, who's been training in high-gravity environments for 6 years. Look at his skeletal structure. It's essentially a completely different frame than what he started with. Blorthax stared at the scans, his mind racing. This has implications beyond fitness. If humans can adapt like this to gravitational stress, what else can they adapt to? Excellent question. We're actually partnering with several research institutions to study exactly that. Early data suggests that long-term high-gravity training might have applications in longevity, disease resistance, even mental health. But that's all preliminary. We're in completely uncharted territory here. Uncharted territory, Blorthax repeated. The story of human existence. Pretty much, Doctor. Sharp grinned. Look, I know this all seems crazy from the outside. Hell, it seemed crazy from the inside when I first signed on. But the data doesn't lie. This works. It's weird. It's painful. It violates numerous common-sense principles, but it works. And that's what matters. Blorthax returned to the transport ship in a state of what could best be described as philosophical turbulence. The return journey was spent writing and rewriting his report, each version somehow more unbelievable than the last, despite containing only factual information. Captain Tresnik had stopped clicking his mandibles nervously and had moved on to what Blorthax recognized as concerned hovering. "You've been working on that report for 8 hours straight," Tresnik said. "Perhaps you should rest." "I can't rest. If I rest, I'll have to think about what I witnessed, and if I think about it too much, I'll have to confront the possibility that everything I thought I knew about biology and safety regulations was fundamentally incomplete." "That bad?" "Tresnik, they're happy. That's what I can't get past. The humans at that facility, they're experiencing regular injuries, constant pain, stress that should be psychologically devastating, and they're happy. Not in a delusional way. Genuinely, measurably, statistically happy. Happier than humans, on comfortable planets with easy lives." "Perhaps," Tresnik suggested carefully, "happiness isn't found in comfort." "Don't you start. I've had enough philosophical revelations for one day." But Tresnik was right, and Blorthax knew it. The data from Kepler Crush Zone showed better mental health outcomes than baseline Earth populations. Depression, anxiety, and stress-related disorders were dramatically lower among facility members. Physical health markers were off the charts. Even social cohesion seemed stronger. Members formed tight-knit communities bound by shared suffering. By the time they reached the orbital station, Blorthax had completed his report. It was 382 pages long, included approximately 5,000 data points, and concluded with a recommendation that would either get him promoted or committed to a mental health facility. He recommended that humans be allowed to continue operating high-gravity training facilities on classified Deathworlds, with minimal regulatory oversight beyond basic safety inspections. The Interstellar Safety Commission received his report with what could charitably be described as confusion bordering on hostility. Blorthax was summoned to present his findings to the Subcommittee on Gravitational Hazards, which consisted of 15 species representatives, all of whom looked at him like he had suggested abolishing the concept of safety entirely. The subcommittee chair being a Droxian named Kelthara, who had approximately 30 years of experience in safety regulation and zero sense of humor, reviewed his report with increasing agitation. "Inspector Blorthax," Kelthara began, her vocal stalks vibrating with barely contained incredulity, "your report recommends minimal oversight for facilities operating in gravitational hazard level 73 environments?" "That is correct. Facilities where humans engage in recreational activities that should, by all known biological models, result in immediate death?" "Also correct. And you base this recommendation on the fact that humans are, and I quote from your report, constitutionally incapable of accepting reasonable limitations and surprisingly competent at not dying despite their best efforts." "Yes, I stand by that assessment." The chamber erupted in what Blorthax's translator interpreted as variations on "what the hell" in 15 different languages. Kelthara raised an appendage for silence. "Inspector, I have read your report. All 382 pages of it. Your data appears to be accurate, your observations seem sound, and your conclusions are absolutely unacceptable. With respect, Chair Being, my conclusions follow directly from the data. The data suggests that humans have somehow turned existential threats into recreational opportunities, that they have monetized what should be unsurvivable conditions, that they are, despite all logic and reason, thriving in environments that we classified as uninhabitable." "Yes," Blorthax said simply. "And you see no problem with this?" "Oh, I see many problems with this. The problems are numerous, significant, and deeply disturbing. However, they are not our problems. They are human problems, and humans appear to be solving them with typical human efficiency, which is to say, through methods that make no sense but somehow work anyway." A Vrentish representative named Quibble raised a questioning appendage. "What about the other 77 classified gravitational hazards? Your report only covered Kepler 442b. Blorthax had been dreading this question. "I conducted follow-up research. There are currently operational human facilities on 63 of the 78 classified death worlds." The chamber erupted again. "The remaining 15, Blorthax continued loudly, are scheduled to have facilities opening within the next 2 years. There is a waiting list of over 2 million humans for these facilities. The economic impact exceeds 90 billion credits annually. The industry employs over 50,000 people directly and supports approximately 200,000 additional jobs in related sectors." Kelthara was now a shade of purple that Blorthax's translator helpfully noted meant experiencing stress-induced chromatic shift. "This is unacceptable," Kelthara declared. "These classifications exist for a reason. We cannot simply allow humans to—" "Chair Being," Blorthax interrupted, which was a significant breach of protocol, but necessary under the circumstances. "With respect, we cannot stop them. We don't have the authority to prevent humans from accessing planets that are technically not claimed by any government. These are unclaimed death worlds. By interstellar law, anyone can go there. They just usually don't, because they would die." "Then we'll change the laws." "To what? Planets are forbidden if they're too dangerous unless you're human, in which case, sure, go ahead. That's speciesist and unenforceable." Another representative, a Celtix named Prondix, spoke up. "What about insurance requirements? Surely we can regulate through financial mechanisms." "Already tried," Blorthax said, pulling up another section of his report. "Human insurance companies have created a completely new category of coverage specifically for high-gravity facilities. Premiums are actually lower than standard athletic insurance because the injury patterns are predictable and the facilities have excellent safety records." "Safety records," Kelthara repeated slowly. "In death worlds. 0 fatalities across all facilities in the past 22 months of operation. Injury rates lower than comparable Earth-based fitness centers. The safety record is, paradoxically, better than if humans were exercising in normal conditions." "How is that possible?" "Because," Blorthax explained, pulling up yet another chart, "in normal conditions, humans get complacent. They take risks because the environment doesn't seem dangerous. In a level 73 gravity environment, everything seems dangerous because everything is dangerous. So humans are more careful, more attentive, more focused on proper technique. The environment itself enforces safety through constant threat of injury." Quibble made a sound that Blorthax's translator rendered as deeply troubled wheezing. "So you're suggesting that the most dangerous environments in the galaxy are actually safer for humans because the danger keeps them careful?" "I'm not suggesting it. The data confirms it." The meeting continued for another 6 hours, with various representatives proposing and rejecting different regulatory approaches. Ban high-gravity facilities entirely. Unenforceable. Require special permits. Humans would just go anyway and skip the paperwork. Impose massive insurance requirements, already covered. Create a special classification system for human-accessible death worlds. Too complicated and ultimately pointless. By hour 8, Kelthara had cycled through 7 different stress-induced color changes and was beginning to repeat herself, which was a sign of cognitive overload in Droxians. "This entire situation is absurd," Kelthara declared for the 32nd time. "Yes," Blorthax agreed, "but absurdity is not grounds for regulatory action. There must be something we can do." "We can," Blorthax said carefully, "acknowledge that humans are operating safely within legal boundaries in unclaimed space, adjust our classification system to account for species-specific tolerances, and move on with our lives." Move on? Move on? You want us to simply accept that our carefully constructed safety classifications are meaningless for an entire species? Not meaningless, just calibrated for different biology. We classified these worlds as death worlds based on the assumption that all spacefaring species would have similar gravitational tolerances. That assumption was incorrect. Obviously, it was incorrect. Correct assumptions don't lead to humans jogging in level 80 gravity. Prondix raised an appendage thoughtfully. "Inspector Blorthax, in your professional opinion, what is the maximum gravitational level that humans can safely tolerate?" Blorthax had hoped no one would ask this question. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "The facilities I observed go up to level 96. Members at those facilities are already discussing the possibility of level 100. I see no reason to believe they'll stop there." "Level 100? That's approaching the gravitational force of a neutron star." "I'm aware. I'm also aware that if I tried to establish an absolute maximum based on my current observations, humans would interpret it as a challenge and immediately attempt to exceed it. That appears to be a core aspect of human psychology. Being told something is impossible makes them need to prove otherwise." The chamber fell silent as the representatives contemplated this disturbing reality. Finally, Kelthara spoke, her voice tired and defeated. "What do you recommend, Inspector, genuinely? If we cannot stop this, cannot regulate it effectively, cannot even establish meaningful safety parameters, what do we do?" Blorthax took a deep breath, or the Quelix equivalent thereof. "We acknowledge that humans have different tolerances than other species. We create a separate classification system for human-accessible environments. We maintain basic oversight to ensure they're following their own safety protocols. And we accept that sometimes the universe contains situations that don't fit neatly into our regulatory frameworks. That's it? We just give up? Not give up. Adapt. Isn't that what we're always telling species to do? Adapt to new information? Well, here's new information. Humans are weird. They thrive in conditions that should kill them, and our attempts to protect them from themselves are both unwelcome and unnecessary." Kelthara was now a shade of blue that indicated resignation mixed with existential despair. "Very well. We'll form a task force to study the issue further and develop new classification protocols. In the meantime, human facilities may continue operating with quarterly safety inspections." "Quarterly inspections?" Blorthax asked. "These facilities would have been inspected annually at most if they were operating in normal conditions." "Yes, well, these are not normal conditions, and I want regular confirmation that humans haven't accidentally discovered a way to kill themselves that we haven't thought of yet." The meeting adjourned, and Blorthax returned to his office feeling like he had just participated in a bureaucratic surrender to the inevitable chaos of human existence. His assistant Vrelnak was waiting with a new stack of reports. "Inspector," Vrelnak said, his gill slits fluttering with what was definitely amusement this time, "we've received applications for 53 new facilities." "Of course we have. 48 of them are on worlds classified as gravitational hazard level 85 or above. Of course they are! And one application, Vrelnak continued, his voice now openly gleeful in that uniquely Vrelnak way, is for a facility on Epsilon Crush, which we classified as level 98. Level 98, Blorthax repeated numbly. The application was submitted by someone named Nalani Chen. Nalani, the woman who had waved at him from the level 80 zone, the woman whose skeleton had literally rebuilt itself, the absolute legend who apparently looked at level 73 gravity and thought needs more challenge. What's the facility going to be called? Blorthax asked, already knowing he would regret the answer. Vrelnak checked his datapad. Epsilon Crush Zone, where gravity goes to die. Where gravity goes to die. That's what it says. The application includes expansion plans for a resort component, including what they're calling a relaxation area at level 89 gravity. A relaxation area at level 89? Apparently humans find mild gravitational crushing to be therapeutic. There's a whole section about the mental health benefits of what they term weight-based mindfulness practices. Blorthax put his head down on his desk, which in his species was a recognized gesture of surrender to forces beyond one's control. Vrelnak, he said, his voice muffled by the desk surface. How long have I worked in safety regulation? 32 years, sir. In those 32 years, I have reviewed thousands of safety incidents, drafted hundreds of regulations, and prevented countless preventable deaths through rigorous oversight. Yes, sir, your record is exemplary, and in 1 week humans have rendered the majority of my career accomplishments functionally obsolete. Yes, sir. Would you like me to approve the applications? Blorthax lifted his head and looked at Vrelnak with the weary expression of someone who has stared into the abyss and found it doing squats. Approve them, he said, all of them. What's the point of denying them? They'll just go anyway. At least if we're officially involved, we can maintain the illusion of oversight. Very wise, sir. I'm not wise, Vrelnak. I'm defeated. There's a difference. If it makes you feel any better, sir, I've been tracking human expansion into previously classified hazard zones across multiple categories. It's not just gravity. They're also operating in extreme temperature environments, toxic atmospheres, high radiation zones, and seismically unstable regions. That does not make me feel better, Vrelnak. I didn't think it would, sir, but I thought you should know. Udbim. Over the following months, Blorthax watched as human high-gravity facilities proliferated across the galaxy. The industry grew exponentially, new companies formed, franchise opportunities emerged. There was apparently enough demand for crushing gravitational forces that market competition had become fierce. He received weekly reports from various inspectors, all of whom expressed variations on the same theme: confusion, reluctant admiration, and deep existential discomfort. Inspector Thendril, the one who had reportedly spent 20 minutes repeating, "But why?" submitted a report from a level 87 facility that included the phrase, "I have seen things that cannot be unseen, and they were all consensual." Inspector Valorax from the Andromeda sector reported that humans had started organizing something called Gravity Olympics, where participants competed in various strength and endurance events across different gravitational levels. The report included footage that Blorthax watched once, and then immediately archived in a folder labeled Evidence of Humanity's Divergence from Rational Behavior. But the most disturbing development came 6 months after his initial inspection. Blorthax received a communication from Candace at Kepler Crush Zone. She was requesting a consultation, which was unusual because humans generally didn't request oversight. They tolerated it begrudgingly while making jokes about bureaucracy. "Inspector Blorthax," Candace said when the communication connected, her face appearing on his display with its characteristic unsettling cheerfulness. "Thanks for taking my call. Of course, what can I do for you? Well, we've been getting some inquiries from non-human species about possibly using our facilities, and we wanted to get your input on safety protocols. Blorthax felt his cardiovascular system do something it wasn't designed to do. Non-human species want to train in level 73 gravity? Not level 73. Obviously that would be insane for most species. No, they're interested in our low gravity zones. Turns out 39 times standard is actually pretty extreme training for species like yours. We're thinking of opening a separate section for non-human clients. You want to create a gym for other species in an environment classified as a Deathworld, supervised by humans who think level 73 gravity is normal. Exactly. See, you get it. We could call it Introduction to Real Gravity, or maybe Gravity Training for Beginners. What do you think? What did he think? Blorthax thought many things, most of which were not appropriate for professional communication. Let me understand this correctly, he said carefully. You want to charge other species money to experience gravitational conditions that are literally classified as hazardous to their health, supervised by a species that is apparently immune to reason and common sense. When you put it like that, you make it sound bad. But think about it. Lots of species are stuck at their maximum gravitational tolerance with no way to improve. What if we could help them gradually increase their capacity? Imagine the health benefits, the strength gains, the bragging rights, the injuries, the deaths, the lawsuits. Okay, but hear me out. What if there aren't injuries and deaths? What if, with proper training and supervision, other species could also adapt to higher gravitational levels? Not human levels, obviously, but better than they currently can handle. Blorthax was about to reject this outright when a thought occurred to him. A terrible, unwelcome thought that he wished hadn't occurred, but now couldn't ignore. "Do you have any preliminary data?" he asked reluctantly. "Actually, yes. We've been running a small trial program with volunteers from 3 species. Want to see the results?" She shared her screen, and Blorthax found himself looking at data that should not have been possible. The volunteers had been training for 3 months in progressively higher gravity levels, starting at their species' maximum tolerance and gradually increasing. All 3 species showed measurable improvements in strength, bone density, and cardiovascular capacity. Injury rates were low, satisfaction ratings were high. One Celtics volunteer reported that their chronic back pain had disappeared after 6 weeks of training. This is... Blorthax struggled to find words. This is actually working? Working great. Turns out the human approach to fitness, progressively increasing stress in a controlled environment, works for other species too. We just have to calibrate it properly. What's crushing for one species is challenging for another. We're basically finding everyone's personal sweet spot. Blorthax stared at the data, feeling his entire worldview undergoing another unwelcome reorganization. "I need to think about this." "No pressure, take your time. We're not opening the non-human section for another 2 months anyway. Just wanted to give you a heads up since technically we're supposed to report major operational changes." "Yes, thank you. I will think about this." After the communication ended, Blorthax sat in silence for what his species considered an appropriately contemplative interval. Then he opened a new document and began drafting what would become the most revolutionary safety regulation in the history of the Interstellar Safety Commission. The proposal was radical: establish species-specific gravitational tolerance ratings based on adaptive capacity rather than fixed maximums. Acknowledge that with proper training and supervision, most species could exceed their previously assumed limits. Create frameworks for progressive gravitational exposure therapy. Essentially, acknowledge that humans had stumbled onto something genuinely useful by being their usual, impossible selves. He submitted the proposal to the subcommittee, expecting immediate rejection. Instead, after 3 weeks of debate, the proposal was Accepted, not unanimously, not enthusiastically, but accepted, with modifications and extensive safety requirements, and probably more oversight than necessary, but accepted. The official announcement stated that the Interstellar Safety Commission recognized the potential benefits of controlled gravitational exposure therapy and would be establishing new protocols for facilities offering such services. It carefully avoided mentioning that the entire concept had originated from humans deciding that Deathworlds would make excellent gyms. Blorthax received a congratulatory message from Kelthara, who had apparently forgiven him for forcing her to confront the inadequacy of their classification systems. "Inspector," the message read, "your proposal represents innovative thinking in safety regulation. While I still maintain that humans are cosmically inadvisable, I cannot deny the data. Perhaps safety isn't about avoiding all risk, but about managing it intelligently. Who knew that humans would teach us that lesson? Who knew indeed?" 2 years after his initial inspection of Kepler Crush Zone, Blorthax found himself back on Kepler 442b for what had become an annual review. The facility had expanded significantly, now occupying 3 times its original space. The membership had grown to over 3,000 humans, with another 8,000 on the waiting list. And there was a new section, clearly labeled Adaptive Gravity Training, Non-Human Species. Candace met him at the entrance, still impossibly cheerful, still apparently unbothered by gravity that should have been liquefying her organs. "Inspector, welcome back. Want to see the new section?" "I suppose I should, given that I technically approved its existence." The non-human training area was smaller than the main gymnasium, but no less impressive. Blorthax could see approximately 20 individuals from various species, all wearing monitoring equipment, all being supervised by human trainers who looked like they had been specifically selected for their ability to say encouraging things while watching other beings suffer. Aquelix, his own species, was performing what appeared to be basic squats in 22 times standard gravity. His face showed the strain, but also something else. Pride, determination, the slightly unhinged expression of someone who was voluntarily doing something difficult. "That's Vrelnak," Candace said. "Vrelnak? My assistant, Vrelnak? Yeah, he signed up 3 months ago. Said he was tired of being limited by his species' unnecessarily cautious approach to physical stress. He's doing great, already increased his gravitational tolerance by 38%. Blorthax watched his assistant, his reliable, sensible, by-the-book assistant, struggling through an exercise routine in conditions that would have hospitalized him 2 months ago. Why didn't he tell me he was doing this? Probably embarrassed. A lot of non-human clients are. There's this perception that training like humans do is somehow cheating or unnatural. But honestly, what's more natural than trying to improve yourself? Vrelnak completed his set, noticed Blorthax, and waved weakly. He made his way over, moving with the careful precision of someone navigating hostile gravity. "Sir," Vrelnak said, slightly out of breath, "I can explain." "Can you? Because I'm not sure I can explain this to myself. I read your reports, all of them. The data was convincing, and I thought, why should humans be the only ones who get to exceed their limitations?" Vrelnak paused to catch his breath. "Also, my back pain is gone, completely gone. I've had chronic pain for 6 years, tried every treatment, nothing worked. 6 weeks here, and it vanished. Your back pain is gone because you're subjecting yourself to crushing gravitational forces. I know it makes no sense, but the data doesn't lie, sir. You taught me that." Blorthax looked around the facility, at the humans performing impossible feats, at the non-humans pushing their own boundaries, at the medical staff standing ready to treat injuries that were somehow less frequent than in normal gyms. "I think," he said slowly, "that I need to update my report again." "Does that mean you're not upset about me training here?" "Vrelnak, I stopped being upset about any of this approximately 18 months ago. Now I'm just observing, documenting, trying to make sense of a universe that seems determined to prove that sense is optional. Candace laughed. That's the spirit. Hey, since you're here, want to try a session? We could start you at level 15, super gentle. Absolutely not. Fair enough, but the offer stands. We've got a special rate for government inspectors. Blorthak spent another day at the facility, conducting his inspection, reviewing safety protocols, interviewing staff and members. Everything was in order. Better than in order, actually. The facility was operating with an efficiency and safety record that would make most normal establishments jealous. As he prepared to leave, Nalani approached him. She had just finished a session in what was now the level 92 zone, looking tired but satisfied. "Inspector Blorthak's, right?" she said, extending a hand that could probably crush his skull like a decorative fruit. "That's correct," he replied, carefully shaking her hand with the grip strength of someone who valued his appendage's structural integrity. "Just wanted to say thanks for approving our expansion plans. The new facility on Epsilon Crush is incredible. We're already seeing members break records we didn't think were possible. You're welcome, I suppose?" "You know what's funny?" Nalani said, wiping sweat from her forehead with a towel that probably weighed more than Blorthak's entire body. "When I first heard about these places, I thought they were crazy, genuinely insane. Who would voluntarily go to a Deathworld to exercise? Indeed, who would do that? But then I tried it, and something clicked. It's not about the exercise, not really. It's about finding out what you're capable of when everything is stacked against you. It's about looking at something that seems impossible and deciding to try anyway. That seems to be a recurring theme with your species." "Maybe, but here's the thing. I've met people from dozens of species here now. The non-human section is growing fast, and they all say the same thing. They were tired of being limited by what they should be able to do. They wanted to find out what they could do." Nalani smiled, and it was genuine and slightly terrifying. "Turns out that's not a human thing. That's a life thing. We just happened to build the facilities first." Udor, as Blorthak's transport ship left Kepler 4142b orbit, he looked back at the planet that had fundamentally challenged his understanding of safety, biology, and reasonable behavior. Humans had looked at the most dangerous gravitational environments in the galaxy and seen opportunity. They had turned Deathworlds into destinations. They had taken what should have crushed them and used it to become stronger. And now other species were learning to do the same. Perhaps, Blorthak thought, the universe wasn't divided into safe and dangerous, possible and impossible, reasonable and crazy. Perhaps it was divided into those who accepted limitations and those who challenged them. Humans just happened to be really, really good at the challenging part. His datapad chimed with a new notification, another facility application, level 103. Blorthak looked at it for a long moment, then did something he never thought he would do. He approved it without reading the full proposal. Then he opened a new file and began writing what would be his final report on human high-gravity facilities. It was much shorter than his previous reports, just 3 pages. It concluded with a single recommendation: stop trying to protect humans from themselves. They're better at surviving than we are at predicting what will kill them. Our regulatory efforts are better spent ensuring they follow their own safety protocols, rather than imposing limitations they'll ignore anyway. Sometimes the most rational response to irrational behavior is acceptance. He sent the report to Kelthara, and then, for the first time in his career, left work early. Some things, he decided, were beyond the scope of reasonable regulation, and humanity was definitely one of them.